Hello, Feminine Road members. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and the changes of midlife and helps you to live a more vibrant second half. If you happen to be catching us on YouTube today, please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss any more of these conversations. If you're on a podcast platform, please subscribe and rate this conversation. Today, we are going to be talking about being willing to take chances later in life. My guest is going to be talking about how she took a chance later in life after a divorce, and little did she know how much it would turn her life around. She wants people to know when people are afraid to take chances and are afraid of change, trust yourself and trust that things will work out. Today, my guest is Diane Height. She is a teacher and the author of a Mongolian memoir. Diane, thank you so much for being with me today.
Gina, it is such a pleasure to be with you and share my story with your audience. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Of course, you sent me a copy of your book, and it was such a lovely read. I would love to have you kind of tell the audience your story so they understand kind of where you were at in your life, about what age you were when this new journey began.
Thank you, Gina. I was in my early 60s, married, and then I found myself going through a divorce. I had already retired from teaching in Southern California, and we were supposed to be together and travel off into the sunset, and that's not what happened. It really threw me for a tailspin because I had no money per se. I mean, not what I thought I was going to have because we were going to combine incomes. And so I was really beside myself. Again, I was about 63 years old. And I can remember meeting my son and his family at one of the malls in Orange County. And I could not get out of the car. I was in such a panic attack. I thought I'd have to call the paramedics. And I knew then that I had to do something. So I just talked to myself and put myself together. And I have a fabulous writing coach that has helped me for the last 20 years. And he said, let's do your resume. And I'm like, oh my God, my resume. Who am I? I mean, I'm nothing. And so he said, wait until we do it and you'll see. So we put together the resume and I looked at it and I went, who is this person? I'm impressed with, what she's done. And then he looked at me and Gina, I will never forget this. It's as though it happened yesterday. He looked at me and he said, what have you always wanted to do? And it was like, it clicked in my head. And I said, I've always wanted to live and work in another country. I'm a wanderlust person, and I discover that more and more about myself as I get older. And he said, then let's do it. That's what you need to do. So I got my resume together and I started sending it. I didn't know what I was doing, but that's never stopped me. I mean, I have so many stories, and a lot of them are in my book, so people can read other things about how I picked myself up in my life. And so I started sending out letters to international schools. I mean, like 50 schools. I can't believe I did that. And rejection, because that's not the way they do things. There are a couple organizations that you go through. So, a long story short, I found this one organization and I started sending out, contacting schools through them. One school wanted me, but because I was in my early 60s, the government in certain countries, the government will not issue visas for somebody that's over 60. And in some cases, it's over 50 or 55. That may be changing. Anyway, I was really disappointed, but I kept trying and trying. And then I get a phone, and I wanted something different. I didn't want to just go to Europe. I've done a lot of traveling. in Europe and other places. I wanted something different. I don't know what that was at that time, but I got a phone call from a recruiter for Mongolia. And I'm like, Mongolia? I know a little bit about Mongolia, but not that much. And he said, we're really impressed with you and we'd like to hire you at our international school in the capital of Ulaanbaatar. And I went, whoa, okay, let me get back to you. And I thought, all right, I have a couple other possibilities, but this is a definite job, which is what I was feeling that I needed. And it was a different place. And so I signed up. I signed up like in May to leave in August, to teach, regular school year. And that was the beginning of my love affair with Mongolia. Yeah, so I packed up my stuff, said goodbye to my condo, which I owned a condo in Orange County, and decided just to hang on to it and said, okay, I'll see you in a few months. And off I went.
Now, it didn't end up being just a few months, though.
No, I actually the first year I almost left because in fact when they hired me, they hired mainly people that came from cold climates like Canada, and here they hired this Southern California gal, and they're thinking, is she going to be able to handle the weather? Because when you read my book, it can get as cold as -20, -30, -40 degrees. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Well, I wasn't. I mean, it was overwhelming. And so I almost left that first year, but I hung in there and ended up teaching for 2 years. And then I came back to California, and then I really missed Mongolia. And I talk about this in my book. I mean, I remember being over my laptop doing some writing, and I just started writing about Mongolia, and I started crying right there over my laptop. And I went, oh my God, I want to go back. And so I contacted the recruiter and thinking, oh, they're not going to want me. I'm even older. And they said, oh, no, we want you. We want you. So I went back for 3 years. And so I altogether spent 5 years in Mongolia, which is almost more my home than where I am right now.
It's amazing to think about going somewhere so remote to what something so far away from your own experience. And so often we have ideas about age, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you come up against resistance? Like, why are you doing that? Why don't you just stay home? Why don't you just do this? Did you get a lot of resistance? Maybe not from your family, but what kind of input did you get?
Well, the biggest resistance are the tapes that play in your head.
Hmm.
And we all have them, whatever we're going through. For me, it was, oh, you're too, why are, you just had a grandson and da 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 da. And so the tapes from, I don't know, my childhood, my mother, I kept fighting them. And even to this day, I fight them. And yeah, I mean, I would say friends, supportive, but yet still there's that thing about age. But I've been reading or hearing more and more people in their 80s. I'm in my 70s now. More people in their 80s and 90s are working because they want to. I really am a late bloomer anyway, of the boomer generation. And um and so I just say, don't let anything stop you. You don't need to go to Mongolia, but certainly don't let age. If you're healthy, then do something. Do something that you've always wanted to do. And don't listen to people. Don't listen to the tapes in your head. Ah.
Those tapes in our head, let me tell you, Diane, those things can really wear you out, can't they?
They can. And I call them, the demons, the dementors, or whatever you want to call them, that just, play havoc on, yeah, like you said, you're too old or you're too whatever, I mean, maybe you're not too old, but you have other things that people are, and friends and family, they love you and they care about you. And really, overall, they're saying it because they're concerned, but also a lot of people don't take chances. I
Yeah.
mean, I have really good friends that would never do what I did. I mean, wouldn't even think about doing it. And so, sometimes their fears come to me, and that's when I have to go, okay, what is the best thing for me? What's right for me? Only me, not me and everybody else.
So one of your
Oh,
strategies is to pause the voices and ask good questions, is what I hear you saying.
exactly. Yeah. And, I have been in situations where, okay, it didn't work out, but then you move on. I mean, there's no guarantees in life, and you can't let the fear of, well, what if it doesn't work out? Well, if it doesn't work out, then I go to the next plan and then the next plan. And all of us, I don't care who you are, you could say, yeah, I've done that. I haven't maybe thought about it on those terms, but yes, that's what I've done.
Mm. This is a, you made a point that I think is really important to highlight. We tend to think of A and then B, but you're saying there's a whole alphabet. So go from A to B. If B doesn't work out, go to C. Just the idea that it, haven't we been doing that all along, technically?
Yes, we have. And that's what I'm saying. We don't sometimes think about it. And, for somebody like me, somebody else may look at me and go, wow. Well, in fact, at the reunion, people are going, I don't know how you do some of these things. And, again, people don't have to do what I do or did. But they have things in their lives that maybe they haven't pursued. And, it isn't teaching in Mongolia, but believe me, I mean, we all have things. Even the people that say, oh, I can't, I can't leave this or leave that. And okay, well, then try something else. Um, I'm kind of a rebel that way. I don't like to be told no. And I was like that as a little kid, like, what are you talking about? Wait a minute. Don't tell me I can't do this. And again, in my book, I have examples of how I just picked myself up and just did it. Um, I was in Cambodia recently during COVID, but I had to leave. And sometimes it's like, oh, well, you had to leave, and okay, so what? The whole world, was at full stop because of COVID. I'm not, and definitely uh, the teaching world, the international teaching world. I mean, I have friends that just now, after 3 years, got a decent job, and it's because of COVID. So, again, stop the tapes. Whatever the tapes are in your, whatever they are, stop them and just look at that tape and say, get out of here. I'm not giving you any airtime. You can appreciate,
You
you're
know,
not going to be
I
part of Gina.
I do wonder the shock of getting a divorce. Obviously, you didn't see the divorce coming.
No.
Can you give a little bit of advice on how to transition in a transition you weren't expecting?
Well, I did have support from friends and family. and my writing coach, who I consider him a friend. And like I shared earlier, I had a full blown panic attack in the mall. I mean, in my car, and initially could not get out. And I just said, "No, you're not going down this road." And I do think sometimes, you just need to talk to yourself, and it may take a while. I don't mean to be flip and because I know people go through depression, and I've gone through that, and anxiety, but there are tools to facing that and not letting that get the best of you. And that's to stay. There's a quote, and I can't think of the author's name. Something about staying in the bud is worse than actually blooming. And I wasn't willing to stay in this marriage for what was going on. And I had already done that in a previous marriage for a long time. And so the motivation was, I'm not going down that road again. Even though this is painful. And I don't know where, I thought I was going to lose my house, my condo. And, but it more than worked out. It was a whole new life for me, a whole new life. So, and I've also I taught for a short time in Italy, again in Cambodia. And I was also in Indonesia, which didn't work out. And sometimes, the voice in my head says, well, that didn't work out. So if you try something now, and I go, stop the tapes, stop. And again, I hope I'm not coming across as being flip, but somebody has to be in charge. And why can't I be in charge?
Well, I mean, technically, your tapes are going to be in charge if you don't stop them, because they
Exactly.
are.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm wondering, you shared how this really positively changed your life. Can you walk us through? So you have this divorce you weren't expecting. It sends you a little bit off kilter. And then you decide to try teaching internationally. How did that change your life?
Well, as soon as I had only been retired for a couple years, so I really first of all, I was going to be making money, and I don't care what anybody says, making money or not making money, when you need to make money, can make a big difference. I mean, it can be a deal breaker. So, I was, oh, wow, I'm going to be making money. And then when I started teaching, I love the Mongolian kids. I absolutely really the Mongolian people are very family oriented. And even if you're not part of the family, if you're not blood, they embrace you. So the first day of school, parents are there with flowers and kids with flowers. And I taught first grade initially. And so, they're all so cute and small. And, grandparents are there, and everybody participates in the upbringing of this child. And they revere teachers as opposed to what goes on sometimes. I mean, quite frankly, in this country, and I saw it and experienced it. And so to have people, just thank you for what you're doing. And and then I learned about this culture. Some of them practice Buddhism. So I would get to see the guys walking around in their orange and red robes. I think it was red there. And in Cambodia, I think it's orange. And so, I learned about a whole different culture. And I would come home to California and go to a party, and somehow it would come up, and people would like do a 360 turn of their head and go, what are you doing, or where are you? And because Americans are not good with geography, so I'd always have to explain, okay, Russia is up here, Mongolia is here, and China's down here. It's in between two powerhouses, and it's landlocked. And so I would explain some things, and people would ask, why Mongolia? And I said, I feel like it chose me. That's exactly how I really seriously. And because I had some other jobs that I could have taken, but and again, I wasn't ready for the weather. I had my Southern California heavy gear. No, I had to buy full on coats, jackets, boots, rabbit. Oh, and that's the other thing, we're here thinking, oh, we can't kill an animal, we can't use the fur of an animal. Well, that's the only thing that really keeps you warm. And so if you're not, I mean, I'm living in this minus 30-degree weather, and I need to be warm. And so I learned about living in that weather, in that cold weather. But it overwhelmed me, and I almost was going to leave. And my principal, again, people step into your life, and I think you need to own that. You need to remember that, the universe, or whomever you want to call, steps in. And so my principal looked at me and said, look, go home for a week. It won't even be a week because of the flights, and and it was spring break, so it was like April, and there was still some snow on the ground and all of that. So that's what I did. I booked a ticket right into LAX, rented a car, drove down to the beach, started to cry because I saw the Pacific Ocean. Called my girlfriend. Oh, God. Saw some family and friends. And honest to God, that's all it took. I went back to Mongolia, and I was changed. That's why I'm saying, pick up on the clues in your life. Remember the things that came into your life, grab onto them. And seriously, I spent another year in Mongolia. And when I left that first 2 years, I mean, I felt like I was leaving home. I felt that was more my home than Southern California. And I still feel that way.
What was it about Mongolia, Diane, that made you feel so at home?
Good question, because I think that's one of the things I was going to talk about. They have a phrase, and everybody uses it, including the Mongolians. It's sort of like Hawaii. It's sort of like Mexico and other cultures.
Like Ohana in Hawaii, that type of thing?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Ohana, because I lived in Kauai for a while, so and I saw the sameness of Kauai and Mongolia. Slower pace of life, something. My first 3 days into Mongolia, the sewer line at the apartment. Now, we were in an apartment that was right with the school, and the sewer line blew up, and I'm like, what? I mean, again, here I am, Southern California beach gal, and what do we do? And so there were things that we had to do. We had to get a whole bunch of water containers, and I don't want to go into all the gory details, but it was 3 days of, oh my God. And so after a while, things like that happen were not that big of a deal to me. In the beginning, oh God, I was on the phone with my principal, like, this is going on. What do I do? You're going to be fine. You're going to be okay. And so we started saying, it's Mongolia. And that was our phrase, like, oh, yeah, the guy said he was coming now, but he didn't come until 3 hours later. And it's Mongolia. Kind of like, I think the Hawaiians say the same thing, chill out, relax. It's not the end of the world. And it's funny because I mentioned I spent about 8 months in Kauai writing my memoir. And when I came back to Kauai, to Southern California, I could not believe the racing around. I'm like, what are these people doing? Where are they racing to? Why are they driving so fast? And you don't get that in Mongolia. It's not, relax. You know, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't things that do bother them, but it's a whole different world. So becoming Mongolian, yeah.
That's, it's interesting because I would say in an American culture, our version of slowing down is almost like a lack of productivity slowing down, you
Yes.
know?
Exactly. God, you are so right. It's like you're lazy or whatever. I don't know, whatever you want to, yeah, it's crazy. Uh, and it's funny because, I went back for a visit in July, and one of the things, and I discovered lots of things, but one of the things I discovered for me was I lost part of my being Mongolian. And I thought, oh my God, you're back in that rat race. And I got there and it's slower and it's different and family is important. I stayed with both my teaching assistants and they just embraced me and gave me like the best bedroom in the house. And there's no question you are part of our family. And this time there was a big celebration going on called Naadam, and it's a celebration of Mongolia. And they have wrestling and archery and huge horse races, and families and friends are everywhere. And some of these people did not speak English, but they were adamant about including me and wanting me to be a part of them. And one of them said, well, why is she going off to the Gobi? We can take her over here. And it's just such a good feeling because I don't think we get that in this country. Everybody, again, like you said, is too busy running around in circles. And because what? If they're not being productive. Oh,
That's my speed. I hear talking to me, you know, and I suppose there's nothing wrong with being that person, but I hear the benefit of pausing to say, is it
yeah,
necessary to be at this
we
speed?
give lip service to all of this. We talk about yoga, we talk about this, and then we're like, pounding the pavement. And and the other thing is, it, the Mongolians don't quite understand our need for alone time as much as we have. And, one day I wanted to go off on my own. And my assistant said, oh, but we want you to come here. Why do you want to do that? And so there's no way. I did not want to hurt their feelings. And I loved being part of the activities. So I love learning about other cultures and in a good way. And yeah, I do compare to what I live in, but it's, I don't know. I think we just need a balance.
Mm. There's something to be said for getting out of what we know into something we don't know and experiencing life from a different perspective. I feel like
Yes.
that's a really valuable thing that you experienced, which what's interesting is it ended up speaking to your soul. Like you didn't just experience it, you actually became a part of you.
Yes. And that's because that's who I am. I think I'm more comfortable living in other countries than I am here. to, really, that's who I am. That doesn't mean somebody else needs to do what I do. Again, I just go back to find that niche, find that thing that you've been wanting to do, but are fearful, and don't let anything, age or whatever, or fear stop you. Um, and take baby steps, and yeah. Now it's almost like my family and friends just wait for, okay, when are you leaving again? If I were to leave, nobody would they would go, yeah, okay, she's gone again. And especially my grandkids, because my oldest grandson is 16 and a half, and he was just 2.5 when I left. And he left me a message on my phone once. He could not say Mongolia. He went, Golia, have fun in Golia. So,
I'm
but
wondering if you can, I don't even know if you can quantify it, because, we live our lives and we're experiencing ourselves as ourselves. The age is happening to us, but we're still kind of inside who we've always,
yes.
who we've always been. And I think, but can you identify what, how different your life looked at 63 than you thought it would? And maybe what you found you were capable of that maybe you hadn't considered before?
Well, I think I wrote this down, but I basically know it in my head. Um, when my writing coach, when we worked on my resume, and when he asked me, what have you always wanted to do? It was though he put a key in a lock and turned that key and opened a door. And I believe that is who I really am. And I think I did, in many cases, what was expected of me, or what I thought. I'm of the generation of women that kind of were transitioning from being stay-at-home moms. We didn't even call it that. I think we called us housewives or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And then women who were in the workforce. And so when that happened, again, I think it's something that I all was inside of me. And I dedicate my book to my grandmother and my aunt, because they had the same kind of adventurous spirit. And my aunt did a lot of traveling, lived in the Dominican Republic during World War II, lots of stories, and totally different than my mother. And I talk about this in my book. So it's interesting. It's just, my mother was, the scaredy one, and my aunt took the chances. And my grandmother, in her own way, took chances. And probably, had she lived in a different generation, she would have done other things. I mean, I know my grandfather died and she hopped on a plane to Hawaii. And so for me, when I said I want to live and work in another country, it's as though that was inside of me for 60 some years. And
I
yeah,
understand that. I do. I
yeah.
understand that. It's interesting. So I read your book, and then my girls and I, we just picked a day. I wanted to spend time with them for Mother's Day this year, but it didn't have to be Mother's Day. I'm like, let's pick a day where you're both off work and we can just go have some food, have some coffee, just find interesting places around that we haven't been to. So we found a bookstore in Orange. I think it was in Orange. And I found a book called Spinsters Abroad.
Oh,
And
ooh,
it is such a fascinating book. And the reason I bring it up is because the whole book is about women at the turn of the century, like
wow.
yourself, who had that wanderlust, who had that desire, but they were locked into the Victorian appropriate dress, appropriate behavior, you were at the beck and call of your family, generally a
Yes.
person that they were often caregivers in their 20s, and their life was what other people told them their life would be. And this book talks about the adventures that these women took and how being in other countries, and you figure in the turn of the century, we didn't have technology to connect cultures. So it was like other worlds
Oh God,
completely.
yes. Oh, totally.
And they share their, a lot of these women drew, because they didn't really have cameras, too many cameras going around back then that were easy to carry. They wrote memoirs like you, and it was interesting to connect kind of where you were at in this season of your life to these women who had to actually be very countercultural.
I can't even, I'm thinking of like Isaac Dennison, who wrote out of Africa
Okay.
and wrote other, and her, and then there was a whole group of women like her. I can't think of the Burl Markham, who flew planes, or I don't know what she did. And yeah, just what you're talking about. Yeah, and I do feel like in some ways I played a role that was set up for me, firstborn daughter. And and I've said, and I guess I have to be careful, I'm not sure I would have gone the path that I went. I'm not sure I would have had kids. Really. I'm not sure that's who I really am. So
It's
yeah.
like the way I hear what you're saying is this experience, this unexpected direction your life took, was somehow deep inside of you an expected path that was just delayed. And so, had it not been delayed, there's a movie called Revolving Doors,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's you see both options. You see two options of this woman's life. Had this happened, here's this path. This happened, here's this path. And I think about that. You know, what would my life be like if I didn't have this set of expectations or this set of circumstances on my life? And I think that's a valid, you know, ponderance, if you will. But I think the beauty in this conversation is okay, but we've lived this life and that has been fine. But if an
Yes.
opportunity arises, you have another revolving door opportunity, right?
And I feel like that's exactly what happened to me. Is I would have stayed married to this person had things not been the way they ended up being. And sometimes I think about that and it almost scares me, because I say to myself, I would have never gone to Mongolia. I would have never done a gazillion things that I've done on my own, traveling, apart from teaching, and experiences, you know, an encounter with a lion, I mean, but I mean, again, the universe stepped in, and, whoever, if you want to say God or whatever you want to say, I think we're given chances, and sometimes we take them and sometimes we don't. And we know we're given chances, but sometimes we're scared. And sometimes I think we just need to say to the universe, I'm kind of scared about this. If this is my path, then okay, but you're going to have to help me. You're going to have to guide me. And one thing I took this from somebody's book, that is some meditation book. I'm a talker, obviously. I was a teacher, but my whole life I like to talk. I have learned, am learning, I should say, am learning to keep my mouth shut about what I may do next. And there might be certain people I talk to because of certain reasons, but if you read a lot of meditation, they'll say, keep it inside of you until until it becomes, oh, I'm going to Mongolia. But, sometimes we share things and then that's when we get in trouble, because the opinions of others, all of a sudden, they've got opinions about what we should do. And some of it maybe we should listen to, but lots of times it's their own fears. I mean, we all have it.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's I do want to share that I'm learning to keep my mouth shut.
More and more.
Yeah.
Well, it is, life is like a river. It's flowing in a direction at all times, even in the
Yes.
still parts of a river, right? What we would consider
Yes.
still waters, something is happening in that.
Oh, I love that. Gina, that I love that because you're absolutely right. And I think we need to hang on to something like that because we keep thinking, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then something is there, but it's not ready or whatever you wanna. Yeah, I like what you said.
Yeah, I find my personality is more driven, more, my mind is busy, and
Hmm.
people have this impression that I'm always busy, and maybe I am. I don't feel busy because it's my pace, I suppose. And I think there, in your story of your life, there's kind of a self acceptance. It's like, uh, you're reflecting on how different would my life have been if I had made different choices. Nevertheless, here you are, and here's this opportunity. And it's
Yes.
coming at a time where people think opportunity has passed you by. And I think
Yes.
that's the encouragement of your story is, it's opportunities change and seasons of life change, but the opportunities aren't passing us by. They might just look different because we took a different path, not because we aren't capable of having that experience.
Right.
That's what I hear in your story.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm reading more and more or hearing more and more books that talk about, and maybe it's because of the boomer generation. We are in our 70s now, and but then there's people, get men too, not just women, that are working and excited about whatever they're doing in their 80s and 90s. I mean, I don't know, William Shatner, what is he's over 90, and he's still acting or doing whatever he's doing. And so I think I always kind of hang on, I go, oh wow, way to go. Don't tell me that I'm going to be in a rocking chair. If that's what you want to do, okay.
Yes, yes. I think the encouraging thing for me is, so I take my age and I look forward 10 years or 20 years and I think, how much life can I live in that time? If I remove the idea that of a certain age, there's appropriate behavior. Because I would like to know really briefly, when you're in a country like Mongolia, does age, I think they probably have a different respect and honor
Yes.
kind of culture, right? But
Yes.
are these older people also active?
And that's a good question. Some of them are, and some of them aren't. But
I just say,
yeah, I can remember the owner of the school that I worked at. I'll never forget. And I think it was the last time I left, which was 2017. Yes, it was. And I remember, and she's younger than me. Um, and I'm not sure. Anyway, she said, I'm never going to retire. And I thought about those words and I went, how cool is that? I kind of feel the same. And
I think
if
there's wisdom in that though, Diane. They're finding that it's like if you don't retire, now I'm not saying you have to work full time, but if you don't
Yeah,
retire, there's something I think that happens mentally that keeps you engaged in living more vibrantly. Like
I
I
think
might
so.
stop this job as opposed to retire, meaning activity to no activity. Because that's how I feel retirement is kind of, people think, oh, I'll travel and I'll do things, but without a purpose, we do tend to go stagnant.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, I, I agree with you. And for me, I was a late bloomer. I think I shared that already. I was a stay-at-home mom, and then I did kind of odd jobs, and then I went back to school and got my degree. And I really didn't start working until I think I was 40 or something. And when I turned, so that was 38 years ago. Oh God. But yeah,
But look
I
how
mean,
much life you've lived and how much you're still living. Isn't that incredible? Because the dialogue is you should be winding down, but instead you're continuing to ride the wave of the river you're living, whatever that looks like.
I, I, I'm, I'm with you, Gina. Yeah.
That's why it's encouraging for me to have you, to talk about your life story. But if you had to kind of sit with my audience with our cups we've been sharing today, our cup of tea, a cup of water, what is it that you would want them to take away from what you've learned? What three things would you like them to anchor into as they move forward along this, what we call aging? I call it just the timeline of life, right? What three things would you like them to know from your experience?
Well, uh, a lot of people are calling this the third act for people like me. Okay. I mean, you did this and then that, and now it's the third act. I mean, it isn't even the second act. So I think um take a chance. That would be number one. Whatever that chance is. And I keep telling people, don't look at me in the sense of you've got to go to a foreign country and live in a ger and you know uh, eat goat meat or what you've got something in your life that you haven't done. And so whatever that is, focus and say, okay, tell the universe, I'm willing, I'm ready, whatever you have for me. I do that all the time. So it would be, take a chance and because there should be no age limit. If you're okay, if you're healthy and we're talking total health here, and you feel like you can do X, Y, or Z or X or whatever, then do it. Don't let age stop you. And don't say, oh, well, I got this ache, or, oh, okay, well, I know 20-year-olds that have aches and pains.
Yes.
So that would be number one. And then um again, as my writing coach, as he put the key in and unlocked that door, follow. As soon as that door opened, it was like my heart, it grabbed my heart. And I would say, follow your heart, not anybody else's. Follow your heart. And the third thing would be slow down. I know it's hard for me. It's so hard. We just, I'm driving the roads and on the freeway and whatever, and I'm thinking, where are you people going? What is, ugh, anyway, I would say slow down. You're going to live longer.
Mm.
I think they did a study of that blue zone
Yeah.
and the people, and one of the things was slow down. It's whatever's supposed to happen will happen. We think we're the artist of whatever needs to happen in the universe, but
Yeah. Like we're
those
in
those would
control
be,
of everything, which we are so not. It's a nice idea in some respects, but the reality is we're not. So, Diane, I want to ask, how do people find your book? And I know we're on audio and video, but since we're video, can you hold your book up for people?
yes, I can. I have. Oop. that right
There it
there?
is. And where
Okay,
can
there
people
it
find
is.
it?
Two places on Amazon, and they can get an ebook,
Okay.
or they can get a like this, the hardcover. And I have pictures. I'm a photographer, so there's, as you know, Gina, there's photos that go along with the stories, because again, Mongolia is so different. And I had people this weekend say, "Oh, I love the photos because you're talking about this X, Y, and Z, and I couldn't relate to it until I looked at the photo that you did." So uh, Amazon and also Barnes and Noble uh, has the ebook and also um, hardcover.
Okay.
So those.
Diane, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your life with myself and my audience, and for, you know, being an example of what retirement can look like and what you can choose to do when life serves you surprises that maybe you weren't expecting. I really honor your journey, and I'm so grateful that you actually took your life experience and put it in this book. And then now you're talking about it, because we need those people, as you know, in my age group, we need to be able to look forward and be inspired, and in life, and what life can still contain. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your story.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I enjoy talking to you and to your audience. And I just say go for it.
Go for it is right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Friends, today we have been talking about taking a chance. Just go for it. So if you are on YouTube or you're on a podcast platform, think of someone who you want to encourage today to go for it, take a chance, and share this conversation. Idea is that it's never too late. Maybe you won't be the star quarterback. Maybe you won't be the prima ballerina. But what else is there in your life that niggles in your spirit that you want to try and do? Just go for it. Give it a shot. Hold a space for it. Let's see what life can hold for us. I really, really love that Diane came onto this show to share how her life was upended. It wasn't just a decision to try something new. She had to make a choice. And in making that choice, she did something that she had forgotten about, was buried deep in her heart. How much opportunity is out there for each one of us? We won't know until we hold a space. Thank you so much for listening today. I look forward to sharing more inspirational people, strategies, and stories with you in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye bye.